I feel like most of us, we didn't exactly map out our careers in any form or fashion, right? It's not a linear process or path for any of us. But for me, I've been very fortunate in that a lot of my growth and exposure has been formed by environments that prioritize people. And that leaders who make space for me to step up. And I've been very fortunate to, through prioritizing relationships and partnerships, find all the roles that I've come across. I've been very successful in terms of relationship building. And I think that has really lent itself to the career path that I've had.
Well, welcome to Humans of Fintech, the show where we get very real about the people building the future of finance. I'm your host, Nicole Casperson. And today we are live from the Fintech Penthouse during Fintech Meetup in Las Vegas. And I am sitting down with Alyse Belavic, Head of Strategic Initiatives at Prove. Alyse is a partnerships and fintech leader operating at the intersection of identity, payments, and fraud prevention. Her career has spanned major players, including American Express, Visa, Mastercard, Discover, Citi, Synchrony, and now Prove, giving her a front row seat to how payments, fraud, and consumer behavior are evolving in real time. Alyse, welcome to Humans of Fintech.
Thank you.
Long resume.
Yeah.
Long resume in fintech. Big names. Just like the diversity in that. Your career has been driven largely, though, by people and culture.
Yeah.
Tell me about the people and the culture that really shaped your pathway into fintech.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like most of us, we didn't exactly map out our careers in any form or fashion, right? It's not a linear process or path for any of us. But for me, I've been very fortunate in that a lot of my growth and exposure has been formed by environments that prioritize people, and that leaders who make space for me to step up and grow in different positions. And so I think, when I first started my career, I wanted to go into business, but what does that mean? I was fortunate enough to start at a Fortune 500 company who really valued the balance of both outcomes as well as people. And I think that really just, for me, set a precedent of the values that I look for in the roles that I seek out. And I've been very fortunate to, through prioritizing relationships and partnerships, find all the roles that I've come across. I've been very successful in terms of relationship building. And I think that has really lent itself to the career path that I've had. I haven't planned for it. I didn't seek out payments and identity when I was,
You didn't dream of this?
No, it wasn't something I stayed up
We're
at
dreaming
night
of it now, huh?
Now I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about user experience, and I'm like, what's wrong with me?
Who am I?
What has this industry done to me?
I know.
But no, I mean, I've been very fortunate, and I do think that some of the most fruitful experiences in my life, not just my career, the last 10, 12 years, have really stemmed from people who elevate me, but also people who allow me to kind of be myself and push within the bounds of work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think one of the most maybe misunderstood elements of our industry is that because the industry is, inherently we're in payments and, all of the things is transactional, but the relationships that we have are that, but go so much deeper. At the end of the day, this is an industry built on relationships. What are some of over the years then, you've been so good at building relationships, you have partnership, basically in your title. What is, and your role, what are some of your life hacks for building relationships over the years in this space? How do you maintain, how do you come out of an event like this or a conference like this and make sure you're connecting and continuing to build the momentum?
I think for me, early on in my career, I was very lucky to be surrounded by some leaders who valued my opinions for the value of the content, not the years of service I had, not the title in my name. And so I think for me, as I try to continue to build relationships, every team member has a role to play. And for me, some of my biggest learnings have come from, working with people who are newer in their career and thinking about things differently because they don't know the standard process and they're constantly challenging it, whether purposely or not, right? Like they just don't know any better sometimes. But like that's refreshing.
Yeah.
And that's very helpful. I also think, particularly in partnerships, partnerships don't live within one function. They are very, very cross-functional. And I'm only as successful as like the team members that I work with who are willing to find and come to the same conclusions or solutions that I am. And if we're misaligned, we're not successful there. So I think for me, it's really coming to the table with, your palms open and, being a team player and being honest when, hey, I don't know the answer to everything. I'm about 10, 11 years into my career now. I have people that I learn from every day that are younger than me and as well as people that are older than me. And so I think having that mindset of like knowledge and guidance can come from anywhere. And trying to also instill that in the relationships that I pursue, because I've been lucky enough to be surrounded by people that gave me that opportunity that helped me, grow in my career and in my responsibilities.
Yeah. So well said. It's community, right? Honestly, I would not be here in the Fintech Penthouse and all the things if it wasn't for the power of the people in the community and being intentional about the environment that I surround myself with, right? We're doing really hard things, guys. We're like innovating the economy in real time. On our backs, no pressure at all. But, and for you, you're fundamentally protecting that layer that a lot of us and any fintech founders and execs in this room understand just how, at the end of the day, precious it is, right? Like I had a guest on my podcast recently who was like, it's people's money. It's the most precious thing, which can feel silly, but it's so true. How did you, so you have this long resume. People help build you up. Relationships, obviously so important. So then how did you get into the identity space?
Yeah. So for context, I used to work in payments. I worked at a big, medium, big size bank, and then went to a very small startup that digital wallet focused on payments. And one thing that was a big differentiator for our company at the time was our ability to identify someone's payment credentials based on a singular attribute like a phone number or an email address. And that was exciting and it was really cool, solutions we were able to bring to market. But to me, I started to realize there's so much more you can do with identity if you're looking at it more proactively versus reactively. So in payments today, a lot of times when you think about like fraud prevention, it's usually at a very singular point in time. It's like a checkpoint, right? And it's like, hey, is this a high risk transaction? Do we think there's something wrong here? But it only happens at the end of like we'll say customer journey of purchasing. If you take a step back though and think about identity more broadly, at account creation, at authentication when someone's accessing their account, and you can have the throughput, not only can you do a better job of like fraud mitigation, but you also have the ability to do more additive things like personalization or a more custom experience for your consumers. So I think something that got me interested in identity around payments, and then beyond that as well, is there's all these cold starts. And because you've got these disparate teams that are siloed often, right? Customer experience isn't often working with compliance unless they have to. And that's how it's looked at, unless I have to work with you. But I think if you look at identity at the centerpiece, you can actually unlock a lot more differentiation and look at things as like this. It's not that this isn't necessary, because it is, right? But it's also a growth lever. And it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be looked at as just a cost center. Jinx.
Yes.
Yeah.
We jinxed because if you read the Fintech FM newsletter, and I hope you do, and if you have been reading it for the last few years, or if you read my book, you'll know that there's whole sections dedicated to this, because I understand, and we all understand how important the work is. What has fundamentally changed over the last 10 years then in terms of how identity is working inside payments, right? Are we getting to a place where the silos are getting more connected? How, is the iPhone involved in this equation over the last 10 years? Like, what's the update you've seen, and what's the status today?
Yeah, I mean, I think like building off of that point of it's not just a cost center, it's like a growth lever. I do think more companies are starting to look at this more holistically from like an identity point of view and being a little bit more ambitious with what they can do. I think last 10 years, again, like identity wasn't something that I was personally excited by. I was like, oh, okay, like we have to do this check. We have to remain compliant. It was like a thing that we had to do, not something that we'd like want to do at the cost of customer experience. But I think, the last 5-10 years, the lines between fraud, authentication, and customer experience are blurry. You can't optimize for one without impacting all of them. And I think if you take identity at the center of that, you're able to create more of a foundation that actually can help you optimize for all three without having to have this like give and take. They've also like customer experience and fraud have often, customer experience and fraud have been often viewed as like at opposite ends of each other. Like I want to prevent fraud, but now I have to do this really frictionful step up, right? And I think there's new technology that, kind of eases that. But if you think about the entire life cycle of the customer, you start to see that like there's actually a lot of value there beyond just preventative measures. There's growth levers there that you can pull as well.
Talk to me about some of those growth levers.
I think personalization is a huge one. As you think about agentic, right?
Say it.
Agentic. But like as you think about that ecosystem, right? There's a lot of buzz right now, and a lot of people are interacting in very, very different ways. And so now you're moving from not only is this the person that I think it is, but is this the intent and like the action that they assign to this agent, and does this agent also appropriately act on behalf of them in the right parameter? Like
the
list goes on, right?
Yeah.
And so like I think, but like from a personalization standpoint, if I know your habits and I'm able to authenticate you effectively at the forefront of an interaction, what else can I pull in more effectively that helps reduce friction, but also, reduce fraud? So things like if I inherently know you're Nicole and you're creating an account online, what if I can seamlessly pull in your payment credentials? Now you're not typing them.
There we go.
It's a lot seamless. It's very personalized. We can give you offers based on your spending habits, but we're also reducing fraud at the same time. Right? Like they don't have to be at odds with each other. And I think that's a big part of the messaging that I'm excited about right now.
Yeah.
And I think the shift in consumer behavior right now is really helping drive a lot of that dialogue and that interest from companies to kind of look at this in a different light.
Do you think it's the customer experience shift in the consumer behavior, right? Is kind of what you mean?
Yeah. And I think like, listen, like, I've seen this on both sides where businesses try to change consumer or customer behavior by creating new tech. But then alternatively, like tech does influence consumer behavior, right? If you think about, again, we'll talk about all the LLMs, right? A year ago, who had heard of OpenAI? Who was actually, I use these solutions, daily, Perplexity, Gemini, like I use them daily now, right? A year ago, that wasn't the case. The way I used it 6 months ago wasn't the case. So like this is an instance where technology is driving behavior, but at the same time, I think there has to be this balance of not just focusing on the destination, but helping the consumer along the journey.
Yes.
And making sure that like it's valuable at every touch point. We're not just focused on A to Z, we're focused on the journey in between.
Well, and to me, I see that as a lot of room and opportunity for founders to see those gaps, right? Play in those spaces, innovate. What if we're entering this agentic AI in commerce world, that to your point, right? Now there's all these other steps that you have to take. Who's solving for those pain points, right? Honestly, what I typically find out is a lot of those are the incredible female founders in the space, right? They're the ones that are obsessed with this and moving forward with that. And I have a few amazing ones coming up in some episodes of Humans of Fintech, so be sure to check some of those out. Where do you think the agentic commerce kind of topic is getting a little ahead of itself? Like what's a little bit more noisy that maybe we could be not paying as much attention to so we can focus more on things like that are important, like finding the gaps in the customer journey and figuring out how to connect them?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been so much growth so quickly that like if you look at some of the recent efforts with like merchants and trying to get their like them completely embedded and their checkout experience completely embedded within like an LLM, right? I think we're jumping a few steps. Like to me, I think right now consumers really value discovery, and they value a reduced, friction experience. But I also think that like I like to be in control. Like I like that this LLM can find me the best deal on a ticket to an event, but I also want to make sure and validate when I'm shopping that that's actually what I want. So I think there's been a lot of buzz about shopping, and I think the issuers, the networks are taking appropriate steps to try to capture where the market will go. But I think there's so much focus on where it will go and not necessarily on where it's at.
Yes.
That there's some misses there. But again, like the market's moving so quickly and people are evolving so fast that we're learning very quickly.
Learning as we go. I do want to kind of put a stamp on what you said, which is really focusing on what's happening now. In reality, right? And not just not only just the end game, right? How do we actually create real sustainability here and fundamentally work together? I was having great conversations before we started the show. We're talking about just the communication, right? Like needing the communication between all of the different stakeholders in our industry, right? Regulation, tech companies, the fintechs, the banks, right? All of us being able, it's crazy that we don't really have a technology problem per se. The technology is great, woohoo! But we have a connectivity issue that only happens when you have the right partnerships, the right people. You're willing to build together with the similar value alignment and end goal that should ultimately be focused around the customer and the consumer. Okay, I had mentioned some of those gaps. What are they? For anyone here that's wanting to figure out where to build in this space.
Well, I think from an identity point of view, right? I think about the LLMs as kind of super apps, right? In a different context, right? We used to, there's a big push a few years ago about super apps and going to one app to do everything. That's kind of what people are using, Gemini, Perplexity, Claude, all of those as their starting point now of discovery. But I think the thing about that is as you think about, if I'm searching for the best credit card for me, right? Or if I'm, looking to shop on a website where I already have a loyalty program, I think there's some gaps where, the benefit and the ease of the OpenAI, Claude, what have you, only goes so far before you leave that experience. So where I think there's a lot of opportunity is really around not only enabling, again, the identity to travel with you, one that's not restricted to one channel or one interaction, but one that can travel with you. Because that's where you actually get more of that personalization, that recommendations, is when you can validate that you are who you say you are. And now I can actually pull in these experiences that are more seamless. I think the other thing here is around, there's so much opportunity, but there's a lot of risk. And that's a lot of the issuers and networks are thinking about is, if we don't put parameters around this, what's the worst thing can happen? Yeah. But again, these parameters shouldn't be at odds with the end goals of the consumers, right? And so how do you balance that? I would never go into Gemini and type in my credit card raw, but people will, and so it's how do you protect that? And how do you think about doing these checks that enable the bot to actually transact effectively, but not removing the protections that are in place? The verifiable intent that then allows you to then go and actually execute the outcome that everyone wants. Merchants want it, consumers want it. And how do you balance all of that? I think there's a lot there.
Yeah. Okay. So then what does the ideal scenario look like then, right? What is when identity and that experience is done well and connected, what does it essentially unlock with fraud prevention, with the growth, all of that? What can we look forward to?
I mean, this is my personal opinion, and more so as a consumer, frankly, than as someone in identity. But for me, it's the ability to be able to interact in the way that I want to in these different environments, and while removing friction, but still feeling secure and connected. I don't want to. Everyone keeps talking about the instance where you ask an agent to buy you a purple shirt. It's what does that mean though, right?
Are we doing that?
Yeah.
Who's asking their agent to buy them a purple shirt?
Anyone? But I think we jump to that conclusion. And for me, it's more about hey, if you actually know whom I am, and if you know the loyalty programs that I'm a part of, if you know my credit card and the different benefits associated with that, and you're searching for a purple shirt or something like that, maybe you can actually surface me offers that not only are like products in line of like the intent or the action that I set for the agent, but that also help me find better deals than I could myself.
Right.
Right. Like, maybe I shop at the Gap or something and I've got free shipping. Or if I am a Chase Sapphire Reserve card holder and I've got this benefit at this certain ticket holder, right? Like, I think there's a lot of that where there's all these benefits and these touch points where merchants, issuers, networks are all vying for like usage and attention. But as a consumer, it's overwhelming. And for me personally, as someone who like has worked in payments, who's worked in identity now, I pride myself on trying to like maximize my points, which ultimately lends me to hoarding my points because I don't know how to best use them. Right. So as I think about this instance, in this use case, it's like, where can, in the agentic in particular, they actually unlock not only the discovery, but taking the information about me and empowering me to make more impactful choices or
the next best action.
The next best action that otherwise I maybe wouldn't have made.
Right. Exactly. Hey, listeners, I want to take a moment to tell you all about the Academy of Fintech, our private membership community here at Fintech is Femme. Now, I built the Academy for founders, operators, investors, and leaders who don't want to just keep up with fintech, but want to help shape where it's going next. Leaders who want real influence and to build in community as we build our legacies. Now, membership includes a private Slack community, monthly virtual salons and masterclasses, plus exclusive fireside chats with industry leaders. Now, that's over 40 virtual lessons that you can access to build your career and influence. Plus, our members receive early access to in-person events, including the FEMI Awards and New York Fintech Week Summits, including our crowd favorite, the Fintech is Femme Leadership Summit, which is also in San Francisco. But the real value is truly the rooms, the relationships, the people. Most of my success has come from building with ecosystem partners and the kind of proximity that turns conversations into real opportunity, real deal flow, real pipeline. And I want to bring that access to you. Now, leaders from Stripe and Mastercard and so many other iconic fintech brands are already inside the Academy. So if you're looking for a place that's thoughtful, high signal, and built for people actually doing the work, memberships are now open. You can learn more and apply at fintechisfemme.co. Just scroll and click on our community tab and you'll learn all about the Academy of Fintech. All right, let's get back to the show. I look forward to that world too, largely because it does, it can feel like you're leaving money on the table if, you don't know all of the pieces, right, that you could be using, right? Even when I put my own consumer hat on, it's like, I get excited if something I use often remembers things about me and like offers me the next personalized thing or exactly that next best action. It does fundamentally save me time. It can, right? It can help me maximize my dollars, which then to me clearly is that pathway to additional financial inclusion for more people, right? Mm-hmm. But once again, this happens when we all work together. I want to pivot to talk about leadership. Before I do, I'm going to ask an off the card question because you mentioned the super app earlier, and I'm going to interview someone at the conference later this afternoon about the super app concept. Just, is that something you think people want? Is that something that like makes sense? I know, hot question, just curious.
I think for me, like it's funny. I think about it in the context of if you're going to ask consumers to change their behaviors on the flip of a switch, I don't think a super app will ever work.
Yeah.
I think you have to like gradually bring them along the journey. And I think if they can find value in the initial touch point and then you make it seamless and it makes sense in the context of whatever they're doing within your app, sure. But I think that's where LLMs and like agentic commerce and all of these new use cases we're exploring has been really interesting because the technology has completely changed people's behavior.
Yeah.
So I think there's something there, but I think it's a lot around consumer adoption. Like my biggest shtick with, sometimes like points and rewards and things like that was always like, in order to get the maximum benefit to yourself, you had to change your consumer journey.
Yeah.
You had to think about it ahead of time. For me, I want to shop for what I want to shop for. Mm-hmm. And if you can bring me value while I do it, I'll use your solution.
Right.
But if you're going to make me like change my habits in a way that aren't natural to me, that don't, create outsized impact, then like maybe it doesn't work. So I think it really depends on the solution and the use case, but I think there's something there if it's done well.
I mean, maybe I should be interviewing you later today again on this. This is, but yeah, something that has been happening, right? We had like the bundling, the unbundling, bundling again. It's been an interesting journey, but okay, I'll keep you posted on how that goes.
Yeah, please.
That was helpful. I'm going to leverage that. One of my final questions for you before we get into rapid fire, like I said, I want to circle back to leadership. At the top of the conversation, we talked largely about how the relationships you've built over time have helped you get to the place where you are today. On our prep call, we talked a little bit about what I decided to call work-life harmony.
Yeah.
Harmony. And it's funny, at Fintech is Femme headquarters, we largely call it just life, right? There's work and personal, and they're all life. Anyone else feel that same way? Okay, good. You're all like, yeah, aren't we? Hi here at brunch, mimosas and conference later, right? Like it's all very intertwined. What does that look like for you? How important is this like changeover? I know there's been a lot of discussions in the leadership world around like no more work-life balance, silly. If you read that in my book, pretend it says harmony, as the conversation has evolved. So talk to me about your version of work-life harmony.
Yeah, I think like just starting with work-life balance, right? I think it suggests that work and life are at odds with each other. And I spend majority of my day at work, right? Like
anyone else?
And so like, I think when we talk about work-life harmony, and it comes back to also investing in environments that like, uplift us, that with people that we actually want to spend time with. Like I talk to my colleagues more than I talk to my mom during the week, right? Like
guilty.
Love my mom, but like, this is the thing is like, that's where we're spending so much of our time. And so for me, it's about investing in places that value me as an individual, as well as push me for the outcomes that I want. And I think, I can confidently sit up here, not stand, I guess, sit up here and say that like some of my closest friends have come from work. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Some people think, you don't have a balance. You don't have the ability to turn it off. And it's like, no, it's like you invest in things that you're passionate about, in your jobs, in your role. You want to be challenged, but you also want to be surrounded by people that uplift you and support you in that. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's a harmony because I love the people that I work with. I also think we probably have all had some days at work where we would have otherwise quit if we didn't like who we worked with. No, just me.
Anyone? Or we didn't have your work wife or your work bestie.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it makes it just more like enjoyable. Like I enjoy going to the office and like seeing my colleagues every day. Like that's a big part of it. And so I think it's having that harmony. You have to have like boundaries, of course.
Of course.
We all have life outside of work, but like I don't think that work and life have to be at odds with each other. Again, everyone's got their own situations and people have families and kids but it is a harmony. And I think if you're not enjoying the people you're working with at work, like I would challenge you to maybe
switch it up,
explore
the environments, right? Yeah. Like switch it up. I had, a woman on my show early, and when I was just getting started, and it lives in my head rent free. And she told me, if you don't intentionally shape the environment around you, it'll shape you, right? Yeah. And so, what do you want that to look like, right? And it's a lot of the inspiration behind these rooms, behind working together, behind Women Who Prove, right? Mm-hmm. Behind Fintech is Femme, behind all these things. And I think our industry could get to a place where we're just getting a little bit more back to basics, right? Great content, good people, a little luxury venue, right? Decent food, right?
Love it. Yeah, I mean,
right. Let's get to the place where we're once again like building those relationships and being excited about the long game there. Yeah. I think it's an exciting time because our industry is maturing in that way. So I love it. Are you ready for some rapid fire questions? Sure. I have just a few and then we'll wrap up. If you have any questions at all though for Alyse, now is the time to speak your mind or comments. I'm going to run through rapid. Yep. Amazing. Hi.
I have a quick question. To have like someone who works in identity, going back to the agentic commerce conversation, have LLMs or I don't work like isolated straight to identity, but have LLMs and big players in the AI space proactively reached out to compliance and identity leaders to basically proactively integrate identity as part of their flow rather than just like, oh, like, got Nicole, like she logged in on Gmail, like great, you know? And
Yeah.
how do you kind of bring in that consumer's identity and verify that before the woman says, can I shop for a purple shirt?
Yeah.
Just from like a safety perspective, has that happened in the industry? Do you think it should? Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's starting to happen. I think, you know, obviously the LLMs are very focused on like the functionality of their technology. And I think like, yeah, like we're at this point where, you know, with a lot of those in particular, identity is historically it's been a secondary thought. But I do think with like, especially in the payment space, there are so many players that need to coordinate and play nice in order for you to successfully transact, right? Like
Yeah.
a lot of consumers don't appreciate there's like 16 players behind the scenes that are doing things. And so I do think that there's conversations that are happening with like the issuers and the networks that are starting to bring identity into the fold. We're seeing different protocols being announced, like Mastercard announced Agent Pay and like verifiable intent. Everyone's throwing out like their iteration of this, but I do think there's like a common throughput of identity. I think the hard part is going to be understanding how and where it fits and how it can consistently, you know, travel with consumers so that you don't have this cold start problem all the time. Because that's, you know, it's cold starts are both an opportunity for fraud and very frictionful for consumers, right? And so I think there's a lot of focus there. I think as consumers start to actually transact more, I think there'll be more action. But it's getting a whole industry to move at the speed of, you know, what these LLMs are doing, and that's a new pace for some of those players, right?
Right.
So I do think what I will say is it's been exciting. While there's been like a lot of announcements, it is very interesting and exciting to see many different players in the space across verticals, functions coming together to set standards to try to make it so that when identity is super essential and necessary, that like the right rails are in place.
That was a great question. Okay.
Okay.
Well, so coffee or tea?
Coffee.
How do you take it?
Ooh. In the summer, cold brew, black. In the winter is a latte.
Hot.
Hot.
Good for you. I've had people on the show that are like, who was it? It was you, Jody. All right, everyone say hi to Jody, the VP of Product at Bread Financial. She was on my show yesterday, and she is a proper New Yorker who will always drink an iced latte in the winter, and now you know that about her. Listen to her show later. All right. Okay, the first app you check in the morning.
iMessage, followed by the weather app, because I've gotten rained on far too many times.
Okay, very good. Fintech trend you're watching closely.
The usage of stablecoins, particularly moving from like hype to utility.
One thing people misunderstand about your role.
I think strategic initiatives can sometimes be like a black box. Like, you know, what
does that mean?
What does it mean? And I think a lot of times people think it means like the biggest, most complex deals. To me, like some of my most impactful deals have been the cleanest cut, smallest, easiest to implement.
Yeah.
So it's not all about the big swings. It's about like finding the levers that you can pull to make like real impacts with the businesses that you work with.
Love that. You can clap at any time. Yep. Thank you. I know. She's amazing. How do I keep this going? Okay. So what is a tiny habit that you make or that you do that makes you just 10 times more productive?
I think for me, it's talking with everyone and everyone at my business, which again, you could argue makes me less effective
You
because
gotta
you're
be a
constantly
yapper.
talking. But like, I do think like I have learned some of the most like insightful details, like the non-filtered frustrations or opportunities from talking to individuals on every single team who are actually in the code every day, in client conversations every day. So for me, it's really the cross-functional collaboration.
So I essentially have a very similar answer to that because what you basically said is, in a way, interviewing people.
Yeah.
That's how I've learned everything about this industry as a journalist, is just by interviewing people, talking. And when you first start in a beat, it's like the first thing an editor will tell you is, I need you to talk to as many people as possible. And just the velocity of knowledge. And it can feel like a lot, right? Like it's a lot to talk to as many people as as we do. But the velocity of knowledge that you can have and the gaps that you can find and the patterns that you can see when you talk to so many different people and you take the notes. And, Otter AI is a thing. I highly recommend leveraging that. All right, my last question for you. What is the best piece of leadership advice you've ever received?
The best advice that I received from someone was actually when they were giving me an opportunity that I probably wasn't ready for, which is if you can't trust in your team, how is your team supposed to trust in you? And so I think about that a lot, particularly, again, like as a partnerships person. I don't know the ins and outs of our technology like an engineer. I don't know the compliance requirements like a lawyer. So I'm only as strong as like my counterparts, and I have to trust in them and they have to trust in me.
So well said. So well said. Thank you so much, Alyse, for joining me on this episode of Humans of Fintech.
Thank you.
Live at the Fintech Penthouse for the Women Who Prove. Be sure to follow the Humans of Fintech podcast wherever you get your podcasts to catch the episode with Alyse and be able to catch all the goodness. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Humans of Fintech. If you loved this and want to hear more from leaders across the fintech industry, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is Fintech is Femme. And be sure to sign up for the Fintech is Femme newsletter, which you can do at fintechisfemme.co. See you next time.